Hot stove conversations about baseball, history, football, and current events that may leave you saying there's more to consider. Now, here's your host, Jack Moore.
Welcome to More to Consider, Jack and Chuck. I'm here with my good friend, Charles Hunley. So we talk all the time. I've certainly mentioned this in many shows. We're just generally friends and we talk a lot, and things come up and we talk about, would that be a good topic to talk about? So we're on the phone yesterday, I think, and today we're recording on February 4th. And now it's just been about a month since the shooting death of Renee Good in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And people have done a lot of analysis. Charles, you had some questions that you wanted to generally discuss. And let me say this up front, because I know we're throwing a grenade in the room. It's just what it is. I'll just say this up front as an editorial comment. The way people are approaching this is, I think, very disturbing, in that it's either ICE agent Wright, there's no reason for review, she's a bad person for coming to protest, or there's no way, no how was he justified in shooting. Right. And it's a lot more nuanced than that. So I'm strictly talking to all of you. And again, if you've been a prosecutor, you've been a defense attorney, you've been on both sides of these kinds of issues. You've defended people against the state, and you've represented the state in criminal charges, and you can do both. And you can be a zealous representative of whatever side, and it doesn't mean you're a bad person. Thank God there's defense attorneys. And as a former defense attorney or someone that's practiced, people used to ask me, did you think that your client was guilty? I'm like, yeah, all the time. You did? And I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't mean that state is going to prove their case. It doesn't mean I can't give someone good advice. It doesn't mean there's not mitigating factors. It doesn't mean there's not ways to properly represent your client. But yeah, do I think most of the time that people were charged, my gut told me that, yeah, they probably quote unquote did it? Sure. But that doesn't mean you can't be a good defense attorney. It's not about you and whether or not you think they did it. The question is, what can you do to defend them? So I say all that up front. I can see both sides of this issue. I could see prosecuting the shooting ICE agent. Prosecuting him for the shooting. And I could also see where there's a self-defense argument. So, yes, Charles, what were your questions? Like, what were you generally, thinking about this whole subject?
Excuse me. I think that it's, when it comes to that whole situation, wouldn't have been in that situation had she just followed a lawful order, which was to get out of the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
But she chose not
okay.
to.
Let me. All right. I'm going to go one at a time on this. That is a good question. Was it a lawful order? And yes. I think most people would say, lawful or not, they were saying, stop the vehicle, get out. Right. So when you have people with firearms that are apparently displaying a potential authority over you, they have badges of authority, and they're yelling, don't move, then yes, it's probably in your best interest not to move, but go ahead.
But remember, she had been following them around. So they knew that she had been following them around. She, they questioned her on this, and instead of her doing what they said to do, such as get out of the vehicle, well, they did ask her, why are you following us? Oh, well, I'm protecting, whatever. But they said get out of the vehicle. She decided not to, and she turned her vehicle. I may get some of these details incorrect, but I remember her turning her vehicle 45 degrees to the flow of traffic. And one of the officers was on the side of her, and the window's open. The other officer was in front of the vehicle. And some people could say, well, why was he in front of the vehicle? Well, okay, that's fine that he's in front of the vehicle. Honestly, it really doesn't, to me, it doesn't really matter that much. But she decides to step on the gas instead of putting it in park and getting out of the vehicle. He shoots through the windshield and ends up killing her. Well, I look at it this way. Well, who's at fault here? Should not people have some sort of responsibility for escalating whatever situation that they're in? And am I going to sit here and say that I wanted somebody to die? No, I don't. That's not the case here. But what I will say is, I can only imagine if I were a law enforcement officer standing in front of a vehicle with my partner talking to the person through a window, and she decides to step on the gas. I'm not paying attention to which way she turned the steering wheel. I'm not paying attention to that. I just know that I'm in front of a vehicle and it's coming towards me. What am I supposed to do? Now, the other thing about this is you would have to ask yourself, again, as a law enforcement officer, why would someone take that risk to try to run a law enforcement officer over and, for no reason? But it's got to be a reason. And whatever that reason is, we can't have you going down the street potentially putting other people in danger anyway. So now I got to take you off the road in whichever way it is. Now,
Okay.
I've gone on for a while and I know you have some questions.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I think one of the things that I think is probably frustrating to a lot of people, I don't see much to analyze in this case, really more than a split second or two. Now, I've heard mixed, and I don't know. And I should have probably done the research to tell you, but I have heard that it is against training of law enforcement generally, and maybe of ICE agents specifically, that you don't get in front of a vehicle. Now, according to his cell phone, the shooter, the agent that was the shooter, he's like working his way around the car, and the wife is like, we don't change our license plate because he's like on the back, filming the back, and then he walks around the passenger side and he's coming around to the front. He's coming to, and let's just use this to orientate ourselves. If we have the driver, Renee Good, looking straight out of her nose, straight ahead, he ends up at like 11 o'clock, left front bumper, fair, driver's
Right.
side bumper. That's kind of the region he ends up in. I would think as a general rule, you wouldn't do that in law enforcement. But again, I don't know what the training thing is, but I think, and I'm not saying that you're necessarily blaming ICE officer when she's being yelled at to not leave and to get out of the vehicle, that he should anticipate the danger. But I would just think as a general rule in law enforcement, you wouldn't be standing in front of vehicles. That wouldn't be, because there's always the chance of someone fleeing.
No, I agree with you.
Okay. So here's the whole thing for me is, let me just go ahead and throw this out there because we discussed it yesterday. There's all kinds of questions about where she stood legally at the time. So a lot of people don't understand that in the Fourth Amendment, when it says search and seizure, people tend to think of seizure as meaning taking evidence, contraband, the drugs that were found in your car. There's search, but seizure also means arrest. So when a person is in a position that they believe they're not free to go, when they're not free to go, when a reasonable person would think that they're not free to go, you can get into, and there are gradations about, and this is what came from the Terry versus Ohio case. Let me start there because a lot of people don't probably know this, but I listened to a guy one time in training when I was a prosecutor. He made a great point, and I'm going to ask you this question. He said there's 4 types of police contact with people. And I was like, man, I never thought about that. There's 4 types of contact. So tell me which ones that it's a citizen and an officer. What are the 4 levels of contact or the 4 types of contact?
Oh, I have no idea what this.
There's full-blown arrest. There's
Okay.
follow me. There's arrest.
Okay.
I have probable cause to arrest you. I'm carrying a valid warrant, or you've committed a crime in my presence, or it's a felony, and I have probable cause to believe a felony has been committed. Most states, you can arrest on a misdemeanor committed in your presence, any felony committed in your presence, or if you have belief that a felony is in the commission, it has been recently committed, you can arrest someone for a felony not committed in your presence if you have probable cause to believe the person was involved. So that's 2. Okay. That's 1, the arrest. Then the Terry stop I'm going to talk about. And then the other one is consent. Now, you probably see videos that people post. And there are these people that basically go out and agitate the police. And I understand what they're trying to prove, but it becomes, I think, a danger. They call themselves, what kind of videos they're doing?
Assault citizen people?
No, well, sometimes they're that, but what they're doing, they're auditors. I'm sorry, they're auditors.
Never heard of
They
that
call
before.
themselves first. Well, and here's an example of what they do. Okay. In many states, It is absolutely permissible to walk down the street with an AR-15 strapped over your shoulder. You can open carry. Now, imagine what happens when you strap on an AR and start walking down the street. What do you think's going to happen?
You're going to draw attention to yourself.
And what else do you think will happen?
Law enforcement is going to show
Phone
up.
calls.
Yes.
Well, phone calls, right? And
Yes.
hey, there's some son of a bitch walking down the street in a machine gun, It's actually a semi-automatic weapon, whatever, but they see what looks like a military style weapon. It's the M16 in a semi-automatic form. And there it is on somebody's shoulder, and they're walking down the street. That is perfectly legal. In most states, it's an open carry. You can just walk down the street with a rifle strapped to you.
Right.
So what these people do then, and they're filming the whole time, is the cop runs up and says, "Sir, I'm going to need to see your license or I'm going to need to see some ID. Am I being detained?" They'll ask. And they're like, "Well, yeah, I'm investigating." "What are you investigating?" "Well, we got calls of a suspicious person carrying a rifle." "What crime do you suspect me of committing?" "Sir, I'm just going to need your ID." "I only have to give up the ID if you can tell me what you suspect me of, what crime." "Sir, we've gotten calls. Is that a crime?" And they're right. They're correct. But you have a frustrated police officer because, I don't know who you are, and you're walking down the street with a rifle. Technically, they're absolutely correct. You cannot command ID of that person unless you reach another stage. So I'll go ahead and cut to the chase. I know I'm getting confusing here. I've probably even taught my classes, but 1, again, is arrest. 2 is consent. You can walk up to any person as a cop and say, "Excuse me, sir, can I talk to you?" And you can say, "Pound sand, hit the streets," and I can't stop you.
Okay.
I can't stop you. But if you start talking, you might create a reasonable suspicion of crime or probable cause. But I can walk up to you and ask you if you'll talk. This is why you should never speak to a police officer. I don't care what they ask you, don't talk, because when you do, you probably they're not going to want to talk to you. Now, they could be investigating something else. They may be trying to stamp down another problem, and they see you and "Sir, did you see anything that just happened?" But even then, you have to be careful to ever speak to the police because they may be laying a trap. Again, arrest, full-blown arrest, custody of the person, or consent, they're opposite ends. You may also notice on that. Have you ever noticed that? I don't know that you've ever been pulled for anything. I don't think you've ever gotten a speeding ticket or anything, but
Yeah, I have.
anyway, but okay. But if you've ever been stopped, most people kind of recognize that the officer will almost uniformly do "Sir, here's your license and registration back. Here's your license and registration back," and then ask the question. They're trained to then say, "Do you mind if I completely tear your car open, cut your tires open, see if you have any contraband in the car?" Now, why did they make it clear to you that they've handed you back everything?
I don't know.
Because you're not free to go without it, right? So if I'm holding your license and registration on the stop, I've asked for license and registration, I've gone back, I've run you for warrants or for any other information, and now I've written you the ticket, I've completed the ticket. I'm like, "Mr. Hundley, thanks for everything. Here's your ticket." And I'm like, "Hey, can I search the car?" Problem. If I ask to search the car, what are you still in? You're still in detention because you got the license and registration in the hand of the cop. So that's why they clearly say to you, "Here's your license and registration. Oh, by the way, do you mind if I search the vehicle?" You have every right to say, "Hell no." I could not believe the number of cases I got as a prosecutor. I couldn't believe it, where the officers did that very thing. This was 20, 25 years ago. But they would hand back the license. And for some reason, these people who had coke in the car or they had marijuana or whatever, they'd go, "Sure, take a look." I don't know whether they were bluffing,
Wow.
but then the cop does the search and finds the stuff. I think a lot of them were scared, they're going to go get a drug dog. Well, that you can't detain the person to go get the dog because you merely, now they'll use the "I smell pot" or something, which can lead to, that can lead to the plain smell doctrine. It's like plain view. I can start searching the car because of the smell. So back again, we have arrest, we have consent. So here's the clear thing on the Terry versus Ohio and why it's important. All right. Terry versus Ohio actually happened October 31, 1963. So it's like 3 weeks before Kennedy's shot. And there's a guy named McFadden who's 35 years a cop, detective. And he's in Cleveland. I think it was Cleveland, Ohio. That's why it's Terry versus Ohio. I think it was Cleveland. He's in a major city. I think it's Cleveland. So he's in Cleveland. He looks over and he sees 3 guys. and they're like near an alley in a jewelry store alley. They walk down, meet, one comes up, looks in the window, goes around the corner, then they come together, they meet. What would you think that might be?
A drug deal.
Or 1963, they're casing the joint. It's a jewelry store.
Okay.
Jewelry
Yes,
is one of the greatest things to try to steal because they're not uniformly serial numbers and that kind of thing. I mean, they're unique pieces of jewelry that you might be able to get money for, and they're harder to identify, right? So jewelry stores and heist of a jewelry store is a big thing, right? So he's got three guys up and down the alley looking at each other, partying, coming back together, talking. So he goes over and he says, "Excuse me, guys, I'm going to need to talk to you guys." And one of them's kind of looking at the ground and one of them's acting antsy. Okay, everybody stop up against the wall, and he frisked them. He frisked them for weapons. And he finds like a crowbar, and he finds tools that are considered tools of burglary. Now all bets are off. He's found probable cause for an arrest. I think he finds I believe he found a firearm. So one of the guys' name was Terry. Last name was Terry. So it ends up being Terry versus Ohio. So the reason this is a pivotal case is he arrests them upon what he finds. But here was the problem. In an arrest, there's a thing that's called a search incident to a lawful arrest. When you arrest someone, you can then search that person for officer safety. Do you have another knife, a switchblade? Do you have another fire? You can just straight up start to do a complete search of the person. And often you'll find other things to charge him with. So if you find the other things to charge him with, one could challenge, well, why did you go in my pocket? You didn't have a search warrant. Well, I was searching you, incident to a lawful arrest. So naturally, what did Terry's counsel say in appealing that conviction? He's convicted of, possession of burglary tools, whatever. So it goes to the Supreme Court. And it's a really interesting case because when you listen to the oral arguments, the problem that the attorney for Terry brought up is, what rights did you have to put your hands on this guy?
Well, there was no reason. The guy hadn't broken any laws or anything like that.
Well,
he essentially didn't have probable cause, right?
Right, exactly. So there's a really good exchange with the attorney representing Ohio, the Attorney General's office, whatever, trying to defend the arrest. And Thurgood Marshall, it's just kind of hysterical because then it was like pregnancy, or at least pregnancy as you and I grew up with the concept before it got changed. But the old saw about you're either you are or you're not. So the idea was you're either under arrest or you're not, right? So Marshall looks at this attorney representing the state of Ohio and he goes, well, was the guy under arrest? Well, okay, Your Honor, not really under arrest, but he goes, well, then did the guy consent to be searched? Well, no, he didn't really consent to be searched. Then how did he put his hands on him? So what they carve out, and this becomes what's called a Terry stop, is the Supreme Court rules, okay, seasoned cops like McFadden, 35-year veteran, are going to run into situations where they know the place is going to be broken into. And while they haven't yet violated the law, you know what's coming. So to go put hands on them, they carve out this exception and say, well, when you have a reasonable suspicion that you could articulate to the court that there was a reasonable suspicion of criminal activity afoot, you can do a limited pat-down search for weapons. Now, I had a case one time. We would play a little law school. I had a case one time in the city where you and I both know where I was prosecuting at one time, not far from where you are now. And there was a sign outside and it said, no trespassing after dark. And I'll give you a big hint. It was 2 a.m.
Okay.
Now, universally in the Commonwealth of Virginia, what is 2 a.m.?
It's pitch black outside.
It's pitch black, right? That's good. Now, I don't care what time of year. I don't care how long a day you have in the summer. Okay. So he sees a guy the police officer witnesses the guy coming out of, like he sees him in the park and coming out of the park. Excuse me, sir. Can I stop? Can you stop there for a second? So he goes up and plays Terry stop. He plays it like I have a reasonable, articulable suspicion of criminal activity. And he goes up and he pats him down.
Mm-hmm.
While he's patting him down, he smells weed all over him. He's getting marijuana like heavy. So when he's patting the guy's pants, the guy's got like cargo shorts on, it's the summer. As he's patting the guy, he hears that cellophane type of sound, baggies, and he knows it's pot inside the bag or it's some drugs. So he reaches in and takes it out, and it's 39 rocks of crack cocaine. Then when he reaches in the other pocket, it's $3,800 in currency, pretty much all 20s. So you know it's distribution because any crack addict would not have 39, they'd be dead. Right. So the crack addict tends to smoke the crack and move on to the next score. They're trying to score the next $20 so they can do it.
Yes.
They don't carry it. Now, the guy might have been a carrier of weed. So anyway, what does the defense attorney argue in trial? We have a trial, and he argues, never should have put his hands in his pocket, never should have blah, blah, blah. What did Jack argue back?
Well, he was in a place that he wasn't supposed to be because of the time of day and so on and so forth. I get it.
Right. Yeah. So he'd already committed a misdemeanor in his presence.
Right.
He was already misdemeanor trespassing. All bets were off. I said, well, Your Honor, he could have done a lawful arrest at that point, and he could have searched him up and down his body. Yeah, Mr. Moore, I agree with you anyway. And he goes, he told me later off the bench, he goes, 39 rocks of crack cocaine. I was going to find, whatever. But I'm just making that point that the Terry stop can create discovery of some things, but you're not supposed to. You're only supposed to pat the person down, and only if you think the person is armed and dangerous. So I just give you that. Now I'm going to ask you the last thing. And I never thought about this. And I was like, wow, that guy's really, really smart to bring this up. What's the fourth level of contact?
I don't know.
I never thought of it. And when he said it, I'm like, son of a gun, you're right. Sobriety checkpoint. Now think about it. You're riding up to a sobriety checkpoint, right? Is there probable cause to arrest you? You're riding up to a sobriety check? Hell no. You haven't done anything. No. You're just riding up to it, right? Okay.
Excuse me.
Is there an articulable, reasonable suspicion that you've committed a crime?
No.
Are you free to go?
Yes.
No, you're not.
I can't
if you turn and run. If you turn and run from it, you will be stopped.
Well,
happens all the time.
That's here in the Commonwealth.
Yes,
I'm 100%.
I don't know a state if you ran from a sobriety checkpoint, you wouldn't be caught.
100% positive.
Okay, all right.
That's not the case.
Okay, all right. You're kicking sand on my little argument here, but his point was you're not under arrest. There's not a reasonable articulable suspicion of crime yet. Yet you don't feel free to go because you have to if you come rolling up to a checkpoint. I don't know. One night in Virginia, I remember I was approaching a checkpoint out on 17 where it's 4 lanes.
Yeah.
And the guy in front of me rode over the median, like down into a valley and came up the other way. And I saw a blue light, and they just came straight after him because he ran from it as he approached it. Well, go ahead.
Now, if you remember, though, think about how the checkpoints are even set up. They're generally set up in a way that you can't turn around because you can. They're usually on off-ramps to highways, or they're in a location whereas you would have to break the law or make some sort of traffic infraction. Or
he did.
To get away. That's why they went after him.
Well, I think they went after him because he turned tail and ran.
No.
You're right. Okay,
no.
Charles, all I'm saying is they're set up where there's a natural drop into the left lane to UE back or turn left. That's where they're set up. And when the guy's approaching it, he's up in front of me. As he's approaching it, and I see all the lights and I see where I'm going to go. I am past any other natural way to turn to the left and get away.
And that's why they do it that way.
And he rode across. He went down a bank and up the other bank to go into the opposite lane and just head out the other direction. And that's when they took off after him.
Yes.
I get it. And you're right. They're getting him for dropping down and running across. But let's also face it. He's going... most likely because he's like, oh shit, here comes the sobriety checkpoint and I don't want to face this. All right. So I said all that about that. So we have these different levels. Now, I say all that to say, regardless of the motivations of Good going into that time, whatever her background, how much she's been harassing, there comes a moment. So then the question would be, when they approach her and the ICE agents, and this has been a criticism, and I think it's a fair one. There's a lot of yelling going on by the ICE agents. I know in the other shooting, there's a lot of film. Whistles are being blown.
Yes.
There are people in a massive amount of harassment of these agents, but there is a lot of yelling going on. There's a lot of direction that seems to be going on. And the first question would be, I think the guy's words were something like, stop, get the fuck, like get out of the vehicle and all. He's yelling, get out of the vehicle for sure. Okay. So one might say at that point, had this agent, did he have the authority, the legal authority? Was he displaying badge of authority or some type of a uniform? Because if somebody starts yelling at you on the side of the road, Charles, pull over, you might be like, I don't see a badge.
Right.
You can't just tell me to pull over. So you have to have some legal authority represented in your screaming at the person to get out of the car, whatever. Okay, I get it. Now, the guy who does the shooting has moseyed around to the front of the vehicle. So now we get into this like almost Zapruder type of breakdown, frame by frame of what's happened. And I have an opinion on it. I think you probably have an opinion on it. But we're getting into this question of potentially a fleeing felon, because it has been argued at the point that she takes off, it becomes a felony evading or, eluding, and she's taken off, et cetera. And I think there's even been allegations that she had committed felonies up to that point because she had hampered with the administration of their duties or whatever. But you and I had talked about this. The most famous case, you hear it every time there's some kind of a shooting, somebody's screaming Tennessee versus Garner. So I wanted to get into the facts on that. That is a 1985 case. And in that case, a young kid, 15, was shot in the back of the head by a police officer as he was running from the police. So the rule at the time, and it was the common law rule, if you have probable cause to believe someone's committed a felony and that person runs from the lawful authority to stop, if someone were to shout in a lawful authority position as law enforcement, stop, do not run, do not leave, and they run, you could shoot to kill. You could use whatever means necessary to stop that person. So in the analysis in this case, there's a woman that lives next door to a woman. There's a lady next door, and she looks over and goes, there's activity going on in the house. Well, I know Marge is 3 states away for a week or something. There shouldn't be anybody in the house. So she calls the police. And again, this is in Tennessee, probably 1982, 83. It goes to the Supreme Court in 85. So I think it probably happens in like 1982. And the law at the time was that you could shoot and kill a fleeing felon. So if one were to break and enter into one's home with the intent to commit some felony therein, or even a misdemeanor therein, it is generally going to be burglary.
Okay.
So the police are arriving saying the lady next door said somebody's rummaging around the house. She saw a light on or something that shouldn't have been on. So they're thinking burglary, which is a felony. Someone has gone into the home and he comes running out of the back door. My memory was he's coming running out of the back door and he's headed towards a 6-foot fence in the backyard of this particular house in Tennessee. And it's poorly lit. It's at night. And the cops yell, halt, halt, run no further. And the kid hits the fence, tries to elevate over the fence. He shoots, hits him right in the back of the head and kills him. So the family sues state of Tennessee, the sheriff's department or state. I don't know. I looked at one account, said he was state police. I think he was local police, but whatever. I don't know why a state trooper. I don't see highway patrol types going into somebody's backyard on a burglary. I think it was probably local, either a city or a county police. But anyway, the guy ends up being exonerated right off the bat because they're like, hey, he did shoot. And when asked, did you think he was armed? He goes, no, I didn't think he was armed. I thought he was 18, turned out to be 15. But at the point he fired the shot, he thought this kid has committed a burglary. Okay. He's gone in the house and he's running out with like a purse that I think ended up having $10 in it. All true. So under the fleeing felon rule of the common law, he could shoot. So the Supreme Court said, okay, well, at the time in 1657, when somebody could have been shot fleeing as a felon, felony was synonymous with death penalty. I mean, if you got a felony, it meant death penalty. Could be rape. It could have been burglary. It could have been any of these things, robbery. Any of that could potentially get you the death penalty. So they said it was almost like you got what you could get in the execution of a sentence. But now that 15-year-old kid's going to get juvenile detention at most. and you just shot and killed him, and they get into the Fourth Amendment and seizing a person with the gunshot, etc.
Mhm.
And they're like, it's a disproportionate amount of force for someone who's not going to get that kind of time. So they play back, even though this police officer is kind of released from any responsibility. The argument goes back to, it kind of should have backed off and said, a 15-year-old kid jumping the fence unarmed right now is not posing a danger to
I agree.
anyone.
Yes.
So today, the argument is you can only shoot, which is the use of lethal force, only if you think that person could cause grave bodily injury or death to an officer or someone else. So now, saying all that, we get to the good thing. There comes a point where it could be argued, if she's committed a felony or any other crime, any other gradation of crime, we get into the question of, was she trying to get away? And this is where,
How about, let me ask you this quick question. Is attempting to run over someone a felony or a misdemeanor?
all right, okay, then you're making it's a great distinction there. I'm sure it would be a felony, but
Okay, so if it's a felony,
the use of a motor vehicle. Okay,
so she's
but
literally in the commission of a felony by trying to run him over.
Okay. This is where we get into the nuance. Okay, so this is where we're going to have the discussion. We're into it now. We're into the discussion. What my eyes tell me, and again, I'm not trying to take a side. I think she's just trying to get the hell out of there. And I'll tell you part of the reason why. When you look at the videotape or you look at the recording from the cell phone of the shooter, she's not even looking at him. She has looked at him and made comments. Now she's turned to her like 9 o'clock, and she's talking to the officer who's been telling her to get out of the vehicle. And she's whipping the wheel around, which is obvious, to the right. And then she floors it, which may have aligned with lurching forward towards the officer. But she's not even looking at him when she starts to move the vehicle. So I don't know whether she thought he was still in front, wasn't in front. But if we're asking whether I believe, based upon the evidence of that film or what the film suggests, that she was consciously trying to strike him with the vehicle, I don't think she was. But it doesn't matter if he was reasonable in believing that the vehicle was lurching forward towards him. Now, go ahead and say what you're going to say.
Yeah, but if I am running from the cops in a vehicle, and there's a cop behind me chasing me, and the cop ends up running to another car, and someone dies in that car, am I not going to be charged?
Well, some of the states have abolished it. You're into a really interesting thing. You're into what used to be called the felony murder rule. And that means, okay, you and I are going to knock over a 7-Eleven. We're bad boys today. You and I are going to knock over 7-Eleven. And I'm like, Chuck, keep the car running. I'm running in. Okay, Jack, I'm down, brother. Go rob the 7-Eleven. I walk in and bring out the gun, and a woman 3 down at the aisle waiting to buy a Slurpee drops dead of a heart attack. You and I would have been potentially convicted, or would have been convicted of murder.
Okay.
You're out in the car and you're like, what the hell did I have to do with it? Or the thing goes bad and the clerk shoots to shoot me and kills the guy behind me.
Mm-hmm.
You get convicted of murder. You and I both get, and okay, that was the felony murder rule. You start playing with the felony, somebody has a heart attack, dies, trips and falls, whatever. You're liable for all of the consequences that flow from trying to commit the felony. Okay. So you're right that if she had gotten away and started a high-speed chase there in Minneapolis on the ice, and one of the officers going after her took out 3 kids, could she be liable for the death? Yeah, sure, she's liable. But let's just stick to what we have here. And the only question we have is, I think this is the whole thing, is, did he reasonably act in self-defense? So there is an objective, reasonable man standard. So it's always supposed to be the standard. Would you, as a person at the front end of the car vehicle, believe reasonably that your life was in peril, that you potentially, and it doesn't have to be death. You don't
Yes.
have to take a broken back. I'm
Yes.
saying you don't have to say like, well, shit, I could take a broken back. I might not die, but I'll accept the broken back rather than shoot her. No, you don't have to suffer, a knee injury, bodily injury, grave bodily injury, or other. You don't have to suffer any of that to not shoot to defend yourself. However, where I think this whole thing's going to also get nuanced, and all right, we go ahead. You're gonna ask something else. You had a question.
Well, not really ask,
Sorry.
but if I was standing in front of that car and I heard that engine rev up, knowing what's about to happen after that is, excuse me, the car is going to move forward, and I'm in front of it. I'm thinking I'm about to get run over.
And again, if she had no intention of hitting him, had totally forgotten him, Charles, hear me out. Charles, hear me out.
But we
If
don't know
she
what's in
had
her head.
lost sight of the fact he was in front or anything else, it doesn't remove the fact he could be justified in taking the shot because he thought he was going to get hit by the vehicle.
Well,
What her intent in doesn't totally matter.
Yeah,
if she was clearly trying to hit him, if she's clearly trying to hit him with the vehicle, then sure, there's an argument to be made. But with the way she pulled the wheels to the right, I think she was just trying to get away. I don't think she had intention of hitting him. But again, if he is in a position where the reasonable man, jury of peers, can say, yeah, I can kind of understand how he got bumped by the vehicle, thought he was going to get run over by the vehicle. But I do think a bad argument is 6 months prior, he got dragged, whatever happened with that vehicle where he was kind of like caught up in the vehicle and got taken down the highway or down the street for 300 feet or something. When people were arguing, well, look at the trauma he's already been through, that would kind of, not so much a justification for his actions, but an explanation. I'm like, that's not good.
It's not good.
Because if he's kind of like the post-traumatic stress, get him the hell off the street. If he can't handle a situation because of a prior incident, then that's a bad admission of the system to say he's even out there. But go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, we can't know what she was thinking.
That's right.
All I can do is put myself in the cop's shoes.
Right.
Which is, if there's a car in front of me and I hear an engine revving, I'm thinking that the car is about to run over me. And there's a person behind the wheel that has been told to get out the car more than several times to get out the car. They refused lawful orders. And now, because they've already refused that lawful order, then maybe they're about to break more laws, such as try to run over me.
Well, okay, Charles, I'm going to say this. I think the only way he pulls firearm and pumps out shots at her, which he was clearly doing, which puts him in a situation where he is exercising lethal force. It's only justified to the degree, that he was put in peril of potential grave bodily injury or death. When that subsides, ends or something, now we go to another analysis. And I think this is part of the problem with analyzing that film. One is somebody pointed out, I think it's a very valid point. When you look at the angles, when he fired the first shot from that left front end of the car, where it struck the windshield, like pretty much in the driver's face area of the windshield, he wasn't that many degrees away from shooting his partner that's pulling at her in the car. Like his partner is right up in there, grabbing in there reaching into the vehicle, which I've also heard is not exactly protocol either. It's not exactly, highly recommended that agents, because you get your arm stuck up in there and she takes off, you're kind of putting yourself in potential for a broken arm or other injury or potential death because you're getting, taken down the street by a vehicle. So there might have been some real questions about, I'm not a training officer. I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just saying, I think there could be questions about, do you ever reach into a vehicle? Is that something that you do in law enforcement? I don't think you're supposed to, but I don't think you're supposed to stand in front of the vehicle. But here's the next thing I want to know. Have you seen what the autopsy results? Apparently the family had an independent autopsy done.
No,
have you heard what the results were? Okay. No. Shot to the head, left temple, exit right side of the head. Whatever that means. I mean, it could be the back portion. It could be almost lateral across the temples, but it says in left side, out right side. One was in the right breast, striking no vital organs. It was an in and out shot. And one, I think, was her left forearm. And then I think there was a potential fourth grazing of a missile or a round that struck her somewhere else, but it was like a grazing wound. But here's the key. When you see the film, there's no question. I've seen the picture of the front end of the vehicle. He has to be orientated in a certain position to fire a shot into the windshield at the angle that would suggest he's kind of out in the front end of the vehicle. And I'm figuring that's probably the first shot. But then it appears as he becomes abreast to her to him, they go from that he's at 11 o'clock to now he's at 9 o'clock, and now he's pretty much parallel to the vehicle at 90 degrees. He's still firing. Now, I don't know that they're ever going to be able to determine the sequence of the shots. I don't know if the first shot through the windshield is the one that went left temple out the back of her head, or whether that was one of the lateral shots as she was passing. Because, and I've talked to friends, and I get it, and I know people that train in law enforcement, you were taught to fire, empty the magazine, make sure the person's no longer a threat. But it does come up if she bumps him with the lurching forward, and now she clears him. She has cleared him. Is it considered reasonable to stop firing? Or do you continue to fire at someone who's now basically in the position of passing? Go ahead.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, man. But all I can think about is why she was in the position that she was in, why the cops, for lack of better words, were in the position that they're in. And the reason,
or federal agents, right?
The reason that they're in this position right now is because there's a group of people who have a mentality that people who don't agree with them are Nazis or Gestapos, and their attitude about that is they don't have the right to be alive. As a matter of fact, we can do whatever we want to do to them because they're such horrible people. Now, if you have that attitude towards law enforcement or whoever it is, then anything that you do to them is justifiable in your mind. That's where we are right now. She was one of those people. We've seen countless videos of people doing things, throwing rocks at cops, bashing their cars. I could go on and on and on, which shows a clear disrespect for law enforcement, for the law, all because they look at them as the enemy and they can do whatever they want to the enemy. Her disregarding his lawful orders is just a symptom of what is going through these people's minds. Unfortunately, she's dead. Problem with it is the reason that she's dead is because of her philosophy, her ideology. That's what needs to be changed. We can argue the tenets of whatever the shooting was all day long, but what really needs to be talked about is why we're in a position right now. That's why we're in this position. There are people out there, all these people that are rioting and burning and looting and so on and so forth are doing this because their philosophy is that if you don't agree with me, you're evil and I can do whatever I want to you because of it. That's why we're at the point that we're at. If that doesn't change, we're going to have a whole hell of a lot more shootings and deaths and so on and so forth. That's the problem.
Well, it has been said, and I think it's something to really consider, is we're a nation of what, 350 million people. God knows all the legal stuff. I mean, it's a lot of people. And it's a pretty good size portion of the continent. I mean, it's, the continental 48 states makes up, pretty good space. If you've traveled the country, it's a pretty good sized place. It's not the biggest country in the world, but it's a pretty good sized place. And they are apparently apprehending and deporting far more people in other states. What are the odds that you have 2 shootings in the same city that just prior to this had been discovered to may have been, most likely, to have been involved in massive amounts of fraud relative to, spending of federal funds coming in or whatever? If you're into the PSYOP world, you could kind of go like, oh, or what was the movie years ago with Dustin Hoffman about the dog wagging the tail what was the title of the movie? But it's basically say it again, wagging the dog. Wag the dog, right. So, but the whole theory behind it is when you need a news story to get things off of you, I think in the movie is what they created a war in Europe somewhere, like, hey, we need a war. President's poll numbers are going down. There's a distraction needed. So you create a war, you create whatever headlines. It's hard to believe that since 2000 or 2020, the George Floyd incident happened a mile away from where Renee Good is shot, is what, everybody seemed to be saying wall to wall on the alphabet news networks. And now you have another shooting, within 21 days or less of the first shooting. So the likelihood that there could be this much mass deportation, etc., but everything seems to happen in Minneapolis, does make one think, hey, do I think it's necessarily my suggesting that people are out there volunteering to die under gunfire? But they are being told, I think it's fair to say, by political leaders, you need to fight the problem. You need to be in the streets. I mean, they're kind of being told, be in the streets. You're right. And this seems to be at a different rate in this one particular city than anywhere else in the country. And there's the thing. It doesn't change to me, though, the analysis of the shooting, but go ahead.
It has gotten so bad when it comes to people essentially instructing other people to go out and do it. Are you familiar with Amanda Seales? Have you ever heard that name before?
No, I don't think so.
So if I'm not mistaken, she was on the Breakfast Club or some morning radio show. But she gained a lot of attention a few months ago when she did one of those me against a whole bunch of conservative roundtable things with young people. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do, I think.
And because of this, she put out a post a few days ago, and she said, yes, people need to go out there and protest because this is important. And, if you have to put yourself in danger, I'm paraphrasing, you had to put yourself in danger. That's what it's going to take for us to, to get this done. But I'm not going out there. And anyone who listens to someone like that has to have just fallen and bumped their head. But there are people who have, and there are people that do. This is why this Renee Good woman is dead, because of that mentality. That needs to be taken care of first. It really does. Or else it is going to be, as I said before, a whole hell of a lot more of this. Just my personal opinion here when it comes to this. I never focused on the shooting itself. I focused on why those individuals were in that situation in the first place. That's what I've been focusing on. And I don't see it as this one instance, because it's not. It's pretty much widespread. It is not just in Minneapolis. It's all over. That's the problem. Until that is solved. Talking about this individual shooting, it's just going to be another one next week.
One can focus on whatever they choose. I mean, I love you. You're my brother. And, you focus on, I get it, because I don't disagree with you. But to me, it's just a separate discussion. If you wanted to say, like, let's have a discussion on the atmosphere that's leading to this, I'm right with you. But, when we talked yesterday, and I was kind of going into the show about is, because another one that you hear people throw around all the time, stand your ground rules, and the stand your ground is this whole question of one's duty to retreat. And no officer, no agent in that situation has a duty to retreat on a vehicle coming at him. If he accepts that the vehicle, he does. Now, would he? If I do think there's an argument to be made, if he could have clearly vacated the area before he was in harm's way, but decided to stand in front of the vehicle and go, no, you need to stop. Like there's this massive amount of distance between, and he stands in the middle of the road with his hand up. And then as she comes forward, he goes, son of a gun, she's really going to come all the way, and then starts popping rounds. I do think that's problematic. It's problematic if somebody were to say, well, I stood out in front of the vehicle and I told her to stop. And he had all types of time, knowing what her intent seemed to be to come towards him. He could have just stepped to the side, but chose not to. Then I think you're kind of getting into an issue of you can't stand in the middle of the road when somebody's clearly deciding to try to leave the scene, put yourself in that position of harm's way to justify shooting. Now, I think the distance he is from the vehicle when she begins to move forward takes away that argument against him. Go ahead.
Yeah, but Renee Good, why were you following the police officers? Why?
But okay. Whether or not she was shot in a justifiable manner, that doesn't matter.
Well, it has to do with mentality, man. I'm sorry, it does.
But that doesn't matter either.
Well, hold on. We were talking about what was going through her head. Okay.
I don't think it matters.
Well, I think it does matter. And the reason I think it matters, okay, how about this? How about we remove completely what was going through her head? She saw a person stand in front of her, and she jammed on the gas.
Well, let me back up and clarify something real quick. If she had said, last thing out of her mouth is, "Hey, you son of a bitch, I'm getting ready to run over your ass." Okay, if that's in the facts, and she lurches forward and he starts shooting, that's the kind of thing that ends the game, I think, as far as the whole discussion. Like, yeah, well, she did scream out right as she moved forward, "I'm coming to get you, you son of a bitch, and I'm bringing the vehicle." But what I'm saying is, whether her intent was to cut the wheel sharp and get away without incident or to hit him, I think is irrelevant to the analysis we're doing because we don't know what her intent was.
All we know people are out there.
Right. And her actions were to move forward as she pulled sharply to the right. That's what she did.
Move forward and again, pull sharply to the right. Yeah.
She's cutting the wheels to the right.
Yeah. But there's a person standing in front of the car who had told her to stop and get out the car.
Okay, we're back to square one, Charles. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Man, if I'm on this jury, that dude's walking. He's walking.
Right. I'm just saying, no, and I think he most likely will. And I've even heard people that aren't big fans of Trump or ICE or the whole operation say, he's probably going to walk on this because of all the things you're saying. To me, though, again, what somebody has to do is slow pulse and with as little emotion as one can give to this, they have to look at it. Was it reasonable for him to believe that he was in harm's way and potential? And I think that's true.
Yeah.
But outside of a more clear demonstration that she's trying to hit him with the vehicle or something like that, if she had yelled, like I said, if she'd yelled, "Hey, you son of a bitch, I'm coming for you. I'm driving this vehicle right at you. Bang, bang, bang." It would be kind of like, well, nobody can really understand what her intent was. And I don't know that it matters whether my point is minors are saying something and cutting the wheels hard to the right. If her intent was not to strike him, but in her action, she gave a very reasonable to him apprehension or a very reasonable view that his life was in danger, then he can fire. Even if she meant no harm. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
that's exactly what I'm saying. So how she got there and what's been going on in her head and all. Now, I do think if he had to defend this, meaning the agent had to be defended in a case, certainly an attorney would probably try to bring it. You get into questions of character. I mean, like as a general rule as a prosecutor, now this is flipped because now you're talking about a defendant. But when you get into character evidence, it gets really sticky. So generally for a defendant, the old argument is, you can't bring up the defendant's 3 prior convictions for rape to say he's a rapist. Like if he's charged with rape. Right. But if you rob 3 banks in a clown suit, this is true. I mean, the MO thing, the modus operandi, if the guy robbed 3 banks in a clown suit and, they're talking to the teller, what'd you see? Some guy looked just like Bozo the Clown. Okay, well, guy's got a history. So if he gets found and it's discovered that could it be admissible to show that he had a modus operandi that he had used in other, that's kind of relevant to this crime. So here, though, the agent would be being charged to bring up her potential motivations and background. Now you're talking about, quote unquote, potentially the victim. No. And the question would be, go ahead.
I know, I understand what you're saying, but say, for instance, I'm going to use your analogy of robbing a bank. Say if I walk into a bank and I hand a teller a note that says, "This is a robbery, give me all the money." And then a cop walks in and arrests me. My charge is going to be attempted bank robbery, right? And that's it. right?
I don't know, because if all you did was give the person a note that said, give me all the money,
Yeah.
I don't know what the force, threat, or intimidation part would be.
Okay, but there will be
I guess in a message like that, one could argue that, but if you didn't present a firearm or any other display of force,
hold on, don't.
I mean, you could argue.
Don't go any further.
You could.
No,
No, I'm just
hold
saying
on,
you
hold
could
on,
argue
hold
if
on.
I hand you the.
Don't
All right.
shit on my point, man. Don't shit on my point.
Okay. All right.
So,
good.
say for instance that is the case, and I get charged with attempted robbery. Okay. All right. I
Okay.
get it. Well, what about the guy who goes and hands a note and he's like, and here's my gun? He's going to get charged with, and I'm just assuming, charged with attempted robbery with a deadly weapon of some sort, right?
Well, robbery generally, it doesn't have to be a deadly weapon, but there has to be force, threat, or intimidation. So if I'm a defense attorney
Yeah.
and all you have on my client, listen to me, if all you have on my client is he handed a note and said, give me all the money, I'm just like, he said, hey, give me all the money.
I understand. I'm just talking about
Or
what he's going to
what?
get charged with. Now he's going to get convicted.
He probably would be charged with attempted robbery.
With a deadly weapon, right?
If then he puts in the note, and by the way, I have a gun.
I have it right here. Here's my gun.
If he presents it, it's all bets are off.
Okay, now with her, get out of the car. I'm refusing to do it. Get out of the car. I'm refusing to do it. Now you're going to try to run somebody over.
But
so,
again, you keep saying now you're going to try to run somebody over. We don't know that was her intent, but go ahead.
Dude, you can say that all day long. I
don't know.
If she had been told, and she had been told to get out of the car, she didn't do it. How many times have we heard where people have gotten themselves into these pickles or predicaments where it's a, hey, I pulled you over because your taillight's out. My taillight's not out, blah, 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 blah. Next thing you know, you're being very disrespectful to the cop. You're calling him all kinds of names, as a son of God, all kinds of stuff. And now it escalates to a felony when all you had to do is comply. And that's why she's dead. All she had to do is comply. She didn't want to do it. And this is what happens when you don't.
I disagree that I don't listen.
Bruh, hold on, man. Hold on. But the reason, if I'm a cop and I'm giving somebody a lawful order and they don't comply, I would assume that they don't care what I say or who I am in the first place. I'm not going to sit there and try to make all the calculations of her turning her wheel and all this other good stuff. If I see the vehicle coming towards me, I'm going to shoot. And that's what I'm going to do. Well, and that's what the cop did. It didn't have to be this way.
I'll give you that. Look, I'll give you that. Given the present sense and impression that the guy in the left front side of the car, driver's side left front, that agent at that point seeing a person who is so willfully disregarding the orders of the officer saying stop, get out, or whatever, when the vehicle begins to lurch, if you're saying that she's created an impression that would make him think she could be posing a massive amount of danger to me, hell yeah. Yeah, because she's not compliant. So yeah, when the vehicle lurches forward, part of the analysis, though, is should you have been there in the first place? And I don't know that has a legal consequence. I don't think it really does, but I think it might be against levels of training. Don't stand in front of vehicles where the person might try to flee. Okay. But now you're getting into the question of the justification of his use of force. And yes,
there's something else, though. And it's funny that you don't hear too much about this part. I remember years and years and years ago, about the time you and I first met, I'm driving down a very, very, very old road in Newport News. Probably the oldest road in Newport News.
I do know that one.
Okay. There is I'm not going to call it a speed trap because no such thing as a speed trap. Either you're breaking the speed limit or you're not. And either there's a cop there or it's not. It's one of the two. I just happen to be speeding through there because it just slipped my mind what the speed limit was at the time. And I get pulled over by a cop. And I was not driving my vehicle. I was driving my girlfriend's vehicle who was sitting in the car beside me.
Right.
I'm getting my license out and I'm asking her for the registration. And she starts running off at the mouth. And I'm looking at her like, will you please shut up? And I look at the cop, and the cop literally is like this. He recognizes what's going on because she's like, he wasn't going that fast and blah, 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 blah. People forget. Old girl's girlfriend was the one giving her the instructions to take off. They forgot. Most people forget about this.
No, that is absolutely true. That is the statement. She goes, "Drive, baby, drive,"
Right.
or something was her statement.
How many times have passengers, especially girlfriends, gotten drivers in trouble because they're running their mouths?
Chris Rock addressed all that. Remember the video he did?
Yes.
How not to get killed by the cops or shot or beat up or whatever.
Yeah, that was
one of them was don't carry the angry female with you because
and
she's got weed in the car. Yeah.
She, Renee Good, was a lesbian, and her girlfriend was egging her on.
I'd have to go back and Zapruder analysis that again, but I think she started saying the drive, baby, drive as she lurched away. I don't think she said it before she hit the gas, but I don't know. That's a good question. Do you think she said it?
Yes.
You think she said it before?
Yeah,
I thought it was kind of like as she's...
Another thing, man. Okay. Remember, they drove from Colorado to go and cause shit. They drove all the way from Colorado. What is the mentality of someone, and I know you see you can't really get into somebody's head here, but what is the mentality of somebody who decides to drive from Colorado to start agitating cops and following them around? This is the mental illness that these cops are having to deal with every single day because people have gotten them. Well, hold on. Last thing. This is what they're dealing with every single day because these people have this mentality that the cops are evil. This is the problem.
Yeah, I mean, she made the comment too, though, whatever, like, dude, I'm not upset or whatever she said before she took off. And,
Then why didn't she comply?
I think she didn't comply. I think that there's probably, based on what we know, maybe a certain degree of these people aren't here legitimately. We don't have to listen to them. I think it's a little bit, it's the same thing that you see with the people. I know. But when you have the people that are Velcroing themselves to the street in these places, I saw the video recently where like these truck drivers that had to move product just like rolled right through these people and they're screaming. They all got their hair painted. But what is it there? I don't know where it was, maybe somewhere in Europe. It's one of these places where they're in mass protest of something, environmental or whatever. And then they go out and they lay in the road or whatever they do, and they put themselves in harm's way. But there is a religious aspect to all of this.
Yes.
There's, I guess, but, like you say, the distances these people travel, because there was something I was going to say too, though, that you were addressing there. I think it was kind of relative to this whole thing about trying to measure. Well, I know what I was going to say. When you're in defense of someone, you're a defense attorney, you got a lot more leeway to play with stuff than you do when you're a prosecutor. So again, when you're a prosecutor and someone's called as a witness, you can only, if the defendant takes a stand, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, law, and states can vary, but in Virginia, you can only ask the defendant for reasons or for purposes of impeachment of their credibility. Say, have you ever been convicted of a felony? Yes. Move on. Have you ever been convicted of any other crime of moral turpitude? That would be lying, stealing, cheating. You can't go any further. If it's anybody else, if they say felony, you can ask them the nature of the felony. You can't do that with the defendant. So there's a little bit more leeway when someone is not. Now, of course, in this position, I'm not trying to be facetious. I'm not trying to be cruel. The victim of the shooting here she's not going to testify, but there's going to be questions about her character. And there may be some questions about her motivation. And I do think it's fair in the defense. It is fair in the defense of the shooting agent to possibly get into what may have motivated her in her behavior. But it's only good if I'm a judge or if I'm on the prosecutor side, it's only good to the degree that what? He knows it.
Okay.
In other words, if the officer that did the shooting doesn't know anything you're talking about, came from Colorado with girlfriend, blah, 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 has a Trump doll in there, and it's like they have a stick doll, they have a voodoo doll that they stick. I mean, it could be all of that. They have ICE agents they hate or whatever. They got posters of things. They can have all of that back home. If he doesn't know it at the moment he pulls the trigger,
Yeah,
I don't care.
I agree
Now,
with you.
because you're Monday morning quarterbacking, and I don't think it's relevant. It's just not relevant to the moment
I agree.
that some would want to argue that she had given. Now, I don't know how much they knew, though, because it sounds like from what you said, she was running a little bit of a track record of being a pain in the ass to them. And maybe they had been on the mic. We got that lady. Yeah, she's kind of got an MO here. We know what she's doing. Maybe there was some of that. But now another thing I think is bad, and I've had talk with plenty of friends about this. Someone says like effing bitch, or I think it was that. There's a statement made on the cell phone of the shooting officer or agent after the car's rolling away on its way to striking the other vehicle, right? He makes a disparaging remark about the woman that's just been shot. I don't think that looks good.
Dude, I've been listening to a lot of Sean Ryan, a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys who have killed who knows how many guys, who knows?
You're talking about special forces types.
Well, but being in a position where somebody can kill you, it doesn't matter if it's in a jungle or in a city. Doesn't matter. They don't have.
I think it does.
I can't imagine. Would it matter if it was a person in a uniform shooting at me or a person that's not in uniform? It doesn't matter. There's a person shooting at me. I'm not going to really have anything good to say about them. I'm not. And if they call her F and B, whatever, she just tried to run over one of them.
I understand. I just said it doesn't look good. I didn't say that somebody won't be sympathetic to his statement. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, and it's easy for me to say because I'm not in the position. I'm not in the position. I'm not, and I'm saying it up front. I'm not in that position. But when you're in law enforcement, I've seen it on a lot of videos where they kind of make a comment that comes back to haunt them because you've made the firing, the car has run off, it's rear-ended the car in front, she's had a headshot, she's out, she's passed, or she's in the process of passing. Yeah, I don't think she was dead because I think actually EMTs arrived, she had a faint pulse, and she died, sometime after the rear end collision of the vehicle. But I'm saying, I just think it's a bad look for any time it's law enforcement. I think what happens in combat, you're clearly across from a combatant and you kind of know the lay of the land. Everybody's shooting at everybody because that's the thing. Shooting at civilians and then calling them names after the moment, I just don't think is a good look, especially if it's caught on your own cell phone.
Okay, so again, Sean Ryan, there was a guy who was on there who set up this program to help veterans who are suffering from PTSD. And because they've seen a lot. And he said that they ended up starting to get calls from police departments. And he realized that those guys were even worse off than the soldiers were. And it's like when you no, not just officers are involved, just in general. Because he said when I would go into battle or on a deployment, whatever, when I would come back, they would afford us time to, if you want to call it, decompress before they would send us really back home. He said, and I never thought about it this way, and it made perfect sense to me. He said, imagine you're a cop and you were just involved in a high-speed chase or a shooting of some sort or whatever. Now your shift's over and you have to go to your kid's basketball game. He said, think about that. You have to have some sort of switch in your head to be able to do that. And he said, it is almost impossible to do that. If these guys, these Delta guys, these, SEALs or Green Berets or whatever, the government is saying that, you know what, you can't do that. You can't come straight out of battle and then go straight home. We need to let you decompress and gather your thoughts, whatever, before we let you go home. But what we're saying to cops, when they deal with this almost every day, people lying to them, people trying to deceive. I could go on and on and on, sometimes being shot at, chasing down people, whatever. But then you say, well, your shift is over, so all is well. Actually, it's not. It's not.
No, my father was a police officer for 40 years. I grew up with it.
So with that
I know what you're
said,
saying. Yeah. And sometimes I know that it was hard for him to cut it off. Again, it wasn't like he was in Manhattan running the beat and all, but he'd been a trooper and he was a sheriff in a town, and he had a lot on him with that. But yeah, I mean, you're right. But I also think that part of what's going on now is some of the pressure on police work today is they are so exposed to like financial ruin. And I know that somebody's going to, perceive this as saying, yeah, you like the good old days when cops got away with bad stuff. But what I'm saying is they're under a lot more scrutiny. And I'll say this as a former criminal justice professor. Guess what happened after Ferguson?
they probably start slacking off.
Well, no kids wanted to be cops anymore. So I got egghead bean counters who were of the same ilk that like defund the police. I mean, they're the same people, right? The people that are above me in the college or the administrators. The same people are like, hey, you're not getting as many people in your classes anymore. And I said, yeah, after the Michael Brown incident in Ferguson and the riots in the streets, not a lot of kids want to be cops anymore. I had a kid who was a really, really good student, and he told me one day, I mean, he was getting courted by a lot of police police departments in and around Richmond, Virginia. He called me one day and he goes, can you help me with thinking about going to law school? I'm like, sure. He's a great student and everything. He went on to a 4-year school. Like, what gives? I thought your heart was on. He goes, now my fiance, soon to be wife, she won't let me be a cop. She won't let me do it. Because basically people are spitting on cops in the street, and it's like, honey, we're going to get married. We're going to have children. You're not going to be a cop. You can go be a lawyer, but you're not going to be a cop. So we were at a state meeting. There's 23 districts or regions. 23 regions of the community college system. Probably 15 of them were represented. And that was the first topic of conversation. Can't get any kids to come to school anymore. And I could never get those dumbasses to understand that. I could not. These are people with useless PhDs or whatever, whatever level of doctorate level degrees they have.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, hey, guess what? Guess what, folks? Guess what? Guess what? You go wall to wall riding across the country. And I'm not justifying bad police action by saying this, but I'm saying you keep pushing this. Defund police, the cops are the bad guy. Kids aren't going to want to do it. That's the only point I was making. I'm not saying there's not some justification to question police behavior. There's a lot of bad police tapes. But what I'm saying is, how are you on the one hand going, why aren't your numbers up? Why? Because no kid wants to be a cop now. And it isn't the first time or the last time that's happened.
Oh, I understand.
Well, there was a drop in military, which is recovered. Why? Because it was turning into a clown show, the way that they were operating it. And I don't think some of the deaths that we've had with our young personnel that didn't make a lot of kids go like, what the hell kind of operation are they running here? You know what I'm saying? It's like, if you're going to have an all-volunteer force, and by the way, I heard one of the most greatest inspirational things. I don't know if you've ever heard this. I'm trying to remember. It was a celebrity telling it. It was a celebrity, and he said, God, I'm really being poor on this, but it popped up on YouTube, and it just really struck me because he said that it was a high school, and it was military day. And the Air Force came in, the Army came in, I think the Navy came in, and they all kind of said, here's your GI benefits, blah, blah, blah. And then he said it was closed with the Marine Corps. And the Marine Corps is like, I don't see a one of you in the room good enough to be a Marine. Not a one of you has what it takes to be a Marine. I don't even know why I'm wasting my time, but I'm going to go out and sit at the table with all the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
And 80% of the kids went to the Marine Corps. He flat said, none of you are good enough. So what they were selling, of course, with the other members of the armed services, and I'm not trying to disparage it, but there was like, these are your college benefits. You're going to get to travel the world. And the Marine said, none of you are good enough for this. You're not ready for the challenge. I'm looking around the room. You're a bunch of soft people. And that's what all the kids wanted to go. They more wanted to go to that table.
Well, he's selling exclusivity.
Yes.
That's what. Yes, I get it.
Sure. And I make that point to say that I do think that there is a certain amount of what happened with the military with the downturn in recruitment or in enrollment, inductees, and whatever. Hell, if it's one thing to die for your country and all the rest, and to have that kind of level of service. If you know where some of the directions we're going, because you've served in the military, and I thank you for your service. But man, if it starts to become something other than, well, I think about this. Do you know what Audie Murphy was asked? I think he took out 50 Germans. He's on a tank that's about ready to explode. There's fuel leaking everywhere. There's fires all around him. He grabs a 50 caliber machine gun and holds off, some ungodly number of Nazis until help arrives. And he wins.
Earns.
Everything.
Earns.
Or earns.
Yes.
Earns. Okay, earns.
Earns. Yes.
You don't win medals.
Right.
You earn. Okay. Right. Anyway, he was turned down by the Rangers, not big enough, turned down by the Marine Corps, not big enough. He was like 5'5" and 135 pounds. He's the most decorated soldier in World War II. I think in American history at one point, at least. Anyway, I know Colonel Hackworth was in that conversation too, but he was asked, why all the heroic things you did? You know what he said?
Not exactly.
You don't know what he said? They were killing my friends.
Well, yeah, that's the mentality. I mean, I understand that's the mentality, but
I might think about that this most heroic of all war heroes, when asked, how did you take out the 55 Germans? Why did you climb on the tank that's about, because they were killing my friends?
Right. I mean, I've heard that I don't know how many times. That's pretty much the sentiment.
But that's why people serve.
Yes, but I think
they should. I mean, at some level.
There is a difference between now and a few years ago. And we got to get back to this Minnesota-Minneapolis thing real quick, because there's another point I want to bring up real quick.
Yeah, because we're gonna go about another 10 minutes, and
the mentality in the military was a few years ago, join, die for your country, and so on and so forth. But now it's back to what Patton allegedly said. It's not for you to join to die for your country. It's for you to make the other poor bastard die for his.
Yep.
That's the mentality that we have now. But before that, again, a few years ago, that was something bad to say. Now it is what the military is for. Again, make the other poor bastard die for his. The thing about Minneapolis, man, I'm finding this so interesting, is that there's a group of people that are saying, hey, we need to go out there and fight for these people because they're being wronged and so on and so forth. But what I'm hearing, and I don't generally bring this up, but I like it. This time I like it. I hear black folks saying, that's not my fight. I'm not getting in this one. This has nothing to do with me. Nothing at all to do with me. And if you notice, who's
you mean
protesting?
Climbing into protesting,
not just
the fact. Okay, but protesting. I just want to make sure we're on the same page here.
Okay.
You're talking about not our fight, as in protesting against a federal agency going out and executing what appears to be in the 2024 election what a good part of the country wanted. And that was to go find people that were here illegally and deport them from the country.
Yes, because black folks were the ones who were affected by it the most.
Mm-hmm.
And thank goodness some have good sense and can realize it. The only people who don't realize this are the people who live, in the castles on the hill and with in their gated communities, and they didn't have to deal with it. But the regular Joe and Joan, black people, were like, yeah, but they were coming into our neighborhoods and they were causing the rent to go up. They were causing the job market to deteriorate, and they weren't supposed to be here in the first place. Please go get them and get them the hell out of here. That's what I'm seeing, and all I can do is sit back and smile, because some of us have been saying this all along, but they weren't paying attention because they didn't think it affected them, but actually it did. And it affected a lot of people. The rent, I remember reading this article several months ago. Rent in some larger cities has gone down 20% since February. And you would have to ask, why is that the case? And I had to explain this to somebody. I said, if you're a landlord and you have 20 people coming to rent your property, you can pretty much say, I'm just going to start jacking up the price. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
It's a law of supply and demand. Well, unfortunately, that number that used to be 20 is down to 2 and 3, if not 0. So what ends up happening as a landlord, you're not just going to sit and let that property sit empty. You got to pay taxes and so on and so forth. You're not going to do that. You're going to lower the price that you're asking for to live in that dwelling. This is what's happening because you can't escape the law of supply and demand. You just cannot.
No.
When you flood the job market with people, what ends up happening, you end up getting or having stagnant wages. This has been going on for quite a few years now. Well, strangely enough, you're starting to see wages go back up because of the law of supply and demand. That 20 people that was wanting that job, we're back down to 1 and 2 again. I see it in my own industry. So this is actually how it's supposed to work. And it's sad to hear both Democrats are saying, well, these people just want a better life. So do I. So whatever. But the ones that really get me are the Republicans, because they're like, yeah, what about all that cheap labor, though? So we're getting them from both sides. But the people who are really being affected by it are the people who are actually in the middle. They don't want to hear us. The SAVE Act. Someone needs to explain to me how in the hell the SAVE Act did not pass, when it's a minimum of 75% of the people in the United States, and it doesn't matter what color you are or where you come from or whatever, they are like, yes, we need to have voter IDs. Yes, but for some odd reason, Congress decided not to. Could you come up with a better case of taxation without representation? I don't think I can. I really don't. So however many they can get out of here, they can get about.
Taxation without representation because of a failure to ID voters?
Yes. Because I had to not explain this. I just told somebody this earlier today. So back in the 90s, I never really paid any attention to the motor voter bills. I didn't think there was too much wrong with them. But now I see why it's a horrible policy. I get it now, because you just arbitrarily giving somebody a driver's license, which is quote unquote considered an ID that they can vote with. No, that's a problem. They need to they need to register themselves, and it needs to be validated that they're actually able to vote. Congress didn't think that having an ID or requiring an ID to vote was that big of a deal. What? Really?
Well, we need to do another whole show, and this is our topic, about what's going on in Virginia.
Yes, we do.
Man.
Yes, we do.
I felt it.
Man.
When I first saw the political advertising in the fall, I thought, I swear, I know that woman. I know that woman. I know what's coming. Like, I could just kind of tell the whole vibe. And affordable everything in a wonderful world of Virginia. And now it's not going that direction. But I was going to say, if I'm not mistaken, what are they trying to outlaw? Paper ballots?
Yes.
Yeah. And they're extending the voting or the counting.
Yes.
So, yeah, we see sort of what's happening.
Dude.
And, but there's, and this again, it's another whole show. We can talk about to some degree what's going on in Virginia, but the amount of Orwellian stuff out there, like, again, like him, hate him, indifferent, whatever. The fact that we lived through 18 months ago or whatever, that time frame of the attacks of trying to get Trump out of the election, and the mantra was always to save our democracy. I'm like, so, okay, where there could be a possible democratic process where he could be elected through the Electoral College, et cetera. Oh, and that's another thing. Virginia's now going to be on this list where they do whoever gets the popular vote gets all the electoral votes. You know that too, right?
Okay. Yes.
It's about ready to hit critical mass. I can't remember the term they use, but the term is basically, or in play, it's you go on to an agreement with all these states that whatever the popular vote winner is, you can elect, even if your state votes for the other person. You can give all the electoral votes to the popular. I mean, it would be, in other words, the 2016 Hillary win.
Yes.
Although she won Virginia anyway, but in states that do that, like say it was North Carolina did that, and Trump would have won North Carolina by 417 votes or something, you still give them all to Hillary because she won the popular vote.
So,
of course, that would have probably. Mm-hmm.
So, I had to make this quick, man. I had a conversation with a friend of mine that I've known since I was 11 years old, and he keeps sending me these videos. Trump's making money off of being a president, and so on and so forth. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I hear those too.
And I sent him a response, and I said, "Is he any different than any of the other ones?" And the guy damn near had a fit about this. And I said, "Dude, you're part of the problem." So then he goes into something else. This one, boy, he's like, "Did you hear that Qatar is giving Trump a 747?" And I'm like, "Who told you that?" "I saw it on the video." And I said, "So they're giving it to Trump?" "Yeah." I said, "Let's just call this guy David." I said, "David, that's not the case. Now let me explain it to you exactly what's happening. These people who have a case of TDS, facts don't really matter to them."
No, they don't.
Because I had to explain to him I tried to explain to him in great detail as to why Qatar is giving or selling the Department of the Air Force a 747-8. They haven't made those in quite some time. Airlines have been switching to the 777 and the 380 for quite some time. They haven't made a 747 in over 2 years now, and that was the freighter versions. So there really aren't any more Dash 8s. The Air Force requires a Dash 8. Lufthansa is in the same boat. They're selling one of theirs to us too, because there's just so few. And I said to him, it's a law of supply and demand. They're just not anymore. He couldn't even understand the concept. Well, no, but they're giving it to him. And I just said, bruh, this is why we're in the boat that we're in. Just because I give you some facts that are contrary to what you believe or what you saw in some video, you're having an issue. But I said, the real issue is that we've known each other for over 40 years. I don't have a reason to lie to you. I don't get anything. I don't score any points. I get no money from this. I'm just telling you what it is, but you're letting politics and the hatred of an individual to cloud your judgment, but also call a person that you know has your back into question. I said, that's what's ticking me off. And that's where we are right now. And man, I can't wait till that asteroid comes.
All right, you're calling for the asteroid again. All right, so I got a couple of things.
Yes.
So in closing, I hope everyone not so much enjoy because it's such a horrible subject, but at least will give some, it'll give us a look on the whole question of what we talked about, kind of the analysis of what this shooting is and what it's done in the big picture. And I think a couple of other things we want to talk about in upcoming shows is a little bit about what happened with Virginia. There is a lot of selling it, I think, on the Republican side. Yep, see, this isn't what you bargained for, is it? You know, she told you this. The she being the new governor told you this, and look what you got, kind of thing. And I'm like, well, maybe Republican Party do a better job of running your candidates. And but then again, I gotta say, you know, Mayoras I didn't think was Jason Mieres, right? I didn't think he was. Am I pronouncing that right? I mean, yeah. So I didn't think he had a bad running as AG, and for the stories to come out about Jones and his comments, and that wasn't enough to derail him. I don't. Right. I think we were kind of in a space that the Democrats were going to clean sweep, so they did. All right. So, and I think we have these things. But the other thing I want to talk to you about, I want to get your take on. I can't wait to get your take. What about the whole Don Lemon thing?
Well, yes, that's gonna be another show for real.
Yeah, it's just another
Yeah.
show because I got mixed on that one too.
Yeah, so do I. Can I show something real quick? I
Sure.
saw this on Twitter, X, and
Mhm.
this is another issue that we have. Now, hopefully I can show this and people can read it. Can you see what that says? Or is it backwards?
But no, I got it. But if we use the government for good,
just read the top of it.
I can't read the top. It's not coming very clear.
Okay, what it said, is that better?
Here we go. If you brought it down a little bit, limited government, Republican after winning their election. Yeah. But if we use the government for good, that is I had a talk with a friend yesterday who was a Republican, great guy. And he goes, well, you libertarians are too pie in the sky, you think. And I'm like, well, it's a principled thought and I get it.
Yeah.
Because I said, my favorite politician of all time, if you want to call it. Now, I loved Alan Keyes. I knew he didn't really have a chance to be president, but I met him 3 times at events and I loved him more than anybody that's ever run for anything. And I loved Ron Paul from afar. And he goes, yeah, Ron Paul's an okay guy. Not ran, but, dad.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just too pie in the sky. I'm like, no, he's saying things you didn't understand.
Right.
He was challenging things you just weren't hearing him. But,
yeah.
I can't find a better person that I would want in public office than Ron Paul. But go ahead, sir.
Yeah, that meme is from the Lord of the Rings. And the guy who's holding the ring, his name is Boromir. And he wants the ring because his father wants to use the ring for good, but the ring is evil. It doesn't matter who has it, it's evil. And these Republicans who get into office say, you have the power to destroy the ring. But you're going to say, but what if we use it for good? It never turns out that way. It always turns out for evil. Always. Get rid of it.
Well, yeah, and what we're basically saying is there could be in the abstract a proper function of government, and when it crosses into certain uses or it's used in certain ways so as to affect what people think are good, but they're doing it outside of what the natural, it's the Ayn Rand thing. What's the role of government?
Right.
Protect individual rights, your life and property from force and fraud from others. Nothing else.
Right.
It's pretty much what Bastiat said in the law. You have the right of self-defense. All government can righteously do is collective self-defense. Grandma gets hit in the head, her purse is taken. You make right with punishing the wrongdoer who affected her life and property, but nothing else. So when you do all the other things, as you're saying, you imply that you're doing good, there's always going to be a problem.
That's right.
Charles.
Yep.
Love you, brother.
Love you too, man.
Always glad to be there with you. Anything you want to say in closing?
No, other than don't believe a word that we say. Do your own research. Yep. That's.
Do we ever say anything though that's researchable?
Yeah. I think everything that we talk about, I don't think we're just drawing or pulling out of our behind.
No, that's true. That's true. We put some things that are like on a baseball show the other day. I said Mark Belanger used to wear out Nolan Ryan. Then I looked it up and it wasn't true, but I was told that.
So yeah, that's been my philosophy as of late when it comes to dealing with people. Yeah, don't believe a word that I say. Just go look it up for yourself. Yeah, do that.
Man, I think we do dabble a lot into kind of the general thoughts of, more of the general. What is the principle?
You're right.
Again, we can argue all these specifics. Like again, in the whole thing we discussed today, we're fuzzy on some of the specifics and we're upfront about it. But the general principle is people are doing stuff in the streets. They're creating an environment which isn't good and somebody got shot. And then we can break down how it happened.
Right.
But we are still in agreement. It's a tragedy. We don't want to see it happen. But we also don't want to see the riots in the street that lead to this kind of energy that leads to the problems. All right. And then you wonder who profits from it. Okay. So God bless you, brother. Love you.
Love you too,
and we will do this again very soon. And we'll talk about other things that Chuck and I want to talk about.
Yep.
Take care, audience. Please like, subscribe, comment, and I will not read the comments. And share. Very good. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like the show, subscribe and hit your notification button to get an update when we post another episode. See you soon.